I've been in life and death situations where I've been involved behind enemy lines. You're focusing on why am I here? I come back to some simple principles. Visualization of what success is fundamental in every walk of life. What AI does is it allows me to think quicker. It gives me the ability to make decisions that can get me ahead of the competition quickly, just by having literally a 5-minute video of you or a 60-second recording. We can look at some of the networks inside your mind, whether you're skilled, tough, committed.
You've taken a lifetime of experience and you're now working with major professional sporting stars, leaders through the Compass for Life program and evolving that into an artificial intelligence system to solve the problem of scale. Floyd Woodrow, pleasure to have you here.
It's a pleasure, Graham.
So let's get started. You're a very different character to the normal human. So today, what you are is one of the world's leading performance experts, understanding how to make people perform in an incredible manner. And I think there's a very unique reason why. First off, just give me your interpretation of, for example, how ChatGPT would describe you, and then we'll get on to where that journey began.
I'd like to think ChatGPT would describe me as being up there with some of the great global leaders in leadership and performance. I think the program that I've designed and developed with my team really does set us apart in the fact that we can work with 5-year-old children to sports stars, to international business leaders, and that is from, as I said, around the world. So I think that would be where I'd like to think it would place us. But for me, it's always been about just understanding how people perform under pressure and how you can enhance that. And I think that to me is one of the key things that I like to do, is just show people how talented they really are.
Excellent. And we'll get on to how you're taking this forward in the world of AI, and I think it's spectacular what you're doing. But let's go right back to the beginning, because the experience that you've had as a human being is very, very rare. So worldwide, everyone knows about the Special Air Service, the people of legend and of myth and mystery. But fundamentally, I think what qualifies you, and you can elaborate, to have been in the SAS, which is the British Elite Special Forces, doing the things that you've done for the period of time that you've done, gives you an understanding that very, very few people would have about just how capable human beings can be.
I think that's probably a great start point, because as we've got with legend and myth, it's not exactly as it is. They're normal human beings. What sets them apart is that they are unbelievably innovative, entrepreneurial, driven, focused, committed, skilled, and there's a toughness about them to stay in the game, to actually just stay on point, which I think is one of the key aspects of anybody performing well. It's not necessarily the most talented, and I think nature is probably the same. It's those that are most adaptable and flexible. Those are the ones that survive the most. And that's what it sets you up to do. The training program itself is designed to put you under pressure as an individual, fundamentally, to see if you're capable of doing these things by yourself, but also you have to work as a team. I often say, I don't think I've seen anybody get to the top of their profession without a team. So it's about your ability to set the right culture, the right environment, and to certainly take people with you. The highest form for leadership for me is always the ability to influence and lead without authority. And I think that's what it creates, an environment which is about performance. And when you arrive there, you're just considered that you're an A. You know, ultimately the standard is, well, you must be an A because you're here. don't drop below that. And of course, I think that just means that people push the bounds of their performance. And again, it comes back down to why I think anybody's talented. Most of the people in the Special Air Service probably left school with very few qualifications. I have no doubt in today's world they'll have been in different categories or have different things that are wrong with them. But that's just completely irrelevant. What they do is they come to perform because they want to be in this environment. They want to be there mentally, physically, and I'm using the word spiritually because it's a powerful word. It means they have meaning. They're engaged in this environment, which means they just commit and push through any adversity, any obstacle, to become the best they can be, actually from an individual perspective, but most importantly, because the things that we have to do are for the country. You know, they're to make sure you're protecting the country, that you're pursuing the government's desires, their aims, and making sure that this is a safe place. But you're also doing peacekeeping. You're doing a multitude of different skills which are really profound and meaningful, which is why I think we set a really high standard on the culture and the values. And the values have been around for decades and decades. And when they were set, they've not changed. You know, the unrelenting pursuit of excellence, high standards of discipline, classlessness, humour and humility. And I think that sets you up to be innovative, entrepreneurial. It also creates an environment where you want to be ahead of the competition. And I think, you know, we'll come on to this later, but I think that's probably been very important in my life as well. It's to seek an opportunity. What enables me to be slightly better? I think that's probably what drew me into the military in the first place. So I just wanted to see how good I could be mentally and physically. How could I drive myself? How do I think? How can I get better? And of course, as you go through lots of different situations in the military, you're put into extreme circumstances, different environments that you've got to adapt to and learn to adapt to very, very quickly if you want to perform at the highest levels. And what I found is that it was interesting to see how people react to those different situations, you know, myself included. And then when you get to understand a bit more about yourself, your personality, the kind of DNA things that you've got within you, and then you can look at it, how do I get a little edge? How do I just stay in front of the competition? What's going to allow me to be more effective? What knowledge do I need? How do I put that into practice? How can I test myself? And again, how can I constantly keep growing and learning? And I think that environment is the key to all human beings that I've come across, is that, look, growth is the key thing, is when you've got people that want to grow, learn, develop, the world's a magical place for you.
So from your personal perspective, so given where we're going to take this and what we will discuss moving on, at the very beginning, Floyd, the kid, give me some experiences and some of the decision making of how you saw life as a kid, and as you went, what decisions in life attracted you? What did you learn? And what is the evolution of Floyd from, let's say, 5, 10, 16, 22, 30, and throughout to lead to this man here today?
I think the start point's always going to be your family. I think realizing that having a great supportive family, social resilience being a really important part of anybody's journey. A very, very egalitarian mum, powerful, entrepreneurial, held down 3 different jobs then, ran the first nightclub in one of the first nightclubs in Bradford. Father worked in the wholesale fruit and veg market. Very loving, very tough environment. They wouldn't hold prisoners, very competitive. My mum more than my dad, actually. My dad was a great boxer, so he taught me how to box. That's one aspect of my life which was very important. But my mum was about winning, about being competitive, about no quarter given. If you played a game, she would beat you. You know, she would want to win, which I loved, because when you did win, you realized you had won. I think that was really, really important. I was always driven by sport, so I always wanted to be in sport in one form or another. So I play all sports, could never choose one to really focus on one. but I was also keen to go out and work, because we weren't wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. Therefore, if I wanted things, I had to buy them myself. So that desire to go and have a work ethic and get money was actually ingrained in all of us. If you want that, then you're going to have to pay for it. So I worked in the wholesale fruit and veg market when I was about 12. That's when I first went down into my dad's market. And what was great about it is you were treated as an adult. So it didn't matter who your dad was. You'll be judged on your abilities, which I absolutely loved. So working in that environment, I worked there for about 5 years. Also took over from my dad in the kind of work that he was doing. He was a brilliant salesman. His ability to communicate and negotiate was exceptional. So I kind of took all that on straight away, and I loved working with adults. I've always been, at that stage, I was always around older people. So I grew up very, very quickly, I think. Boxing helped as well, so I was comfortable in who I was. I was okay to look after myself. Went to a big comprehensive school, 2,000 kids, so you had to look after yourself. But I embraced school, really loved it. Academically, I was probably quite good, but I could coast, so they allowed me to coast, so I decided to do that. But I played tons of sports. It just allowed me to play loads of sport, really. I didn't have to study too hard. I could get away with a lot. But I was always driven by, again, performance. My mum and dad then went to the Channel Islands, went to Alderney, where they took over a pub. It was my mum's dream. And my mum was quite old. When she had us, she was quite old, myself and my younger brother. She had 3 older boys, who my oldest brothers, there's a 12, 10 and 8 year gap. But mum has always wanted to run her own pub. And dad, what I love about him was he went with her. They were in their late 50s, took over a pub, had a great time. I went across to run the off license for about 6 months. I had a great 6 months, but wasn't my kind of scene. Although I had a great time, I knew I was going in the military. So I went and joined the Paras, embraced the Paras straight away, had probably best training that I've had. 6 months was great. Went to battalion, was quite disappointed by it. It wasn't as driven as I thought it should be. And joined the Special Air Service at 22. So all the way through, I think it was about growth and development. And of course, you learn a lot in the Special Air Service. Very, very talented people.
And it just being 22 years old,
Yes.
because that's very rare.
Yes, it is. I think what was great for me was it just was realizing that although I was probably quite good as a paratrooper, in this group they were stronger, fitter, more experienced. My learning curve was vertical, and they were just more talented. So I struggled for 6 months. There's no two ways. I look at it and think I was selected on my potential. In fact, I know I was selected on my potential. And I think that was probably another great thing, because that's a turning point in life. Had I not been selected, it's interesting which walk of life I would have gone down. Fortuitously, I was, and then had a phenomenal career. I loved every aspect of it. Worked all over the world. Worked in some phenomenal areas. I learned a lot about myself. I studied law and psychology whilst I was in the military, and I think that's where I started to get a real strong desire to understand about people. What makes them tick? Why is that person different to that person? Why has that person operated brilliantly under pressure? Why has that person struggled a little bit more? What can I do as a leader or as somebody that is now training people to perform better? Because at the end of the day, we're always operational. We're always on the front line. We're always doing something that's immensely dangerous. How can I make sure that when I'm running training or developing people, that they're the best that they can be? Now,
so that just something to add in there. That is a huge responsibility. I mean, I've been developing artists for many years, and it is a huge responsibility because they have the power to, done correctly, impact hundreds and hundreds of millions of people's lives. Equally, what you're talking about, it's not, are they going to get great reviews? It's, could that lead to successful outcomes or death?
yeah, that's true. But I think what's great is we've obviously spoken about this, and I think the way you were looking at developing your artists is actually similar, because you realize they're going to go through trauma. So all of the successful people you've trained, yes, you can look at it and go, they've got great success, but it's a very fickle industry, and it's a tough industry. And more importantly, the media, the social presence that they now have can be quite extreme. And of course, I always talk to people actually in business and say the same thing. You may go, this is life and death, but I never thought I was going to die. I always it never even came into my head. In business, I've been more scared because of the consequences of a business failing and people being out of work, things not going well. So in some cases, I've probably been under more pressure in business than I ever was in the military, because it's how we see it and how we think. So I think in lots of respects, you can look at it from how I look at performances, that these things can have enormous consequences if you're not aligned sort of mentally, physically, and I'll use the word spiritually, but I mean from a purpose perspective, a meaning perspective. I think that's massively important, and the inner journey that you go on is far more important than the outer journey. The outer journey is just allowing me to go through experiences and enhance what I'm doing. The person you become, that you can be, is the key on anybody's journey. That's the most important thing. And then actually I can deal with anything that's external, because it's not really relevant. It'll be just part of my part of the time that I'm here on the planet and working my way through learning things, and hopefully at the end giving back to society. The more content you are, the easier life is going to be.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, specifically because to put yourself in positions, I mean, we've done this with being in Iraq, Afghanistan, Sudan, off the coast of Libya, on the film, other places around the world. To intentionally put yourself into a position which is uncomfortable and different is actually extremely fascinating and enriching. You learn so much more. Whereas if you just stay within your comfort zone, then there's a natural limitation to what you can learn and how you can evolve as a human being. So actually, to put yourself externally in all these different positions, to absorb a lot more information, to understand and to see perspectives from a different angle, then internally can make you change in ways that you didn't even know that you could. And I think that's, especially with the artists, and we're going to be discussing AI, but the AI that we've been developing is about an incredible observation of everything that the world consists of everywhere, and then the internal context. And the internal context, it could be a private individual, it could be a business, but everything around you is affecting your own internal decisions in a way. And in many ways, that's where growth comes from. So growth as a human being, as you said, more in the spiritual moving forward element commercially, so that you can have a greater awareness of your customers, your audience, how they're feeling, what works, what doesn't work, what good looks like, what bad looks like, to avoid and mitigate risk. And perhaps that's the thing that, in an education standpoint, unless that is proposed and then individuals experience, then it's almost an intangible value, which I think moves on to where we're looking at AI of opening the doors. It's really a way of thinking.
Oh, I totally agree. Your experiences, as you just said, you will never grow if you don't get out your comfort zone. It's just not going to happen. So you have to experience these things. You have to feel them, see them, touch them, taste them. It's so important. But you have to have the right skill sets. So why education is so important, and why, again, and I know the work that you do, you're giving people experiences, you're showing them and you're developing them, and you're giving them, in some cases, years of prep, so that when they step into the pressure zone, they can perform, they can do their job, they can love it, they can embrace success, but they're not defined by that. That's the key thing, is you're not defined by any of these elements. It's you're way bigger than that. It's about you finding contentment in who you are and what you do. That it's the love of music, in your case, the love of music, the love of developing film, the love of growing and passing on a message. That's it. And of course, you can be judged by that, and there's nothing wrong with being judged by it. But when you can walk away going, I did a really good job there. I actually put the time. And having worked with some of your team this morning, I can honestly say that is what they've done is world class. And I'd go, it'd be irrelevant what somebody said after that for me, as long as you can get to that point where you are comfortable internally with who you are. That is where the difference comes in. And that is about education. That's about giving people the ability to trial these things, to test themselves, to have the right skill sets, put those skill sets under pressure, and then all of a sudden the world's a great place. Because most people that criticize you have never even been in that environment. They've never even put themselves through those kind of pressures. So why would I be worried about what their judgment is? And again, I said most of the time you'll get all the right compliments because the job you've done is really, really good. Just concentrate on, do I think this has been right for me on my journey?
And
That's important.
from your experiences, just to set the scene, could you give some examples of extremely high pressured situations you've been in your earlier career, which have provided value to how you understand moving forward? And
Yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate where I've been in life and death situations where I've been involved behind enemy lines. I've been involved in peacekeeping operations where you're working with people that are in unbelievably difficult situations and circumstances. I've dealt with warlords, and therefore it's your ability to again come back to some basic skill sets of great communication, great negotiating, making sure you're in the right space and you're focusing on, why am I here? I come back to some simple principles, and I will talk about probably compass later, but even though I may not have known it when I was going through it, but the philosophy for me was always be very clear on what you're trying to do. What is your purpose? What is the aim? What's the meaning? What's the end result look like? That visualization of what success is fundamental in every walk of life. And ancient wisdom will come back and give all of those things. If you look at the great philosophers, psychology, neuroscience, it will say the same. Have a purpose, something what I would term a super North Star. What does it look like? Sits above the horizon. So no matter what's happening down here, I can see it. Very important. It's not my end result. It's just taking me forward to learn these experiences as I grow internally. You've got to have a strategy. That's critical thinking. Critical thinking is now more important than ever, and we'll come on to that later when we talk about AI. You and I will have a great discussion on that again, I'm sure, because I've now got to look at it and go, AI is a phenomenal tool. It can be used in a number of ways, but what's the strategic element to it? What's my analysis? Facts, figures, detail, no emotion. This is the steps that I need to take if I want to get there. Who do I need around me? What are the key elements to it? But wisdom, common sense, and judgment is the key thing here. Inundated with data, is that data going to make me faster, stronger, fitter? If it's not, get rid of it. It's irrelevant. Too much data anyway in this world. What are the key critical aspects? East cardinal values and culture. And again, we've had a great chat about culture today, and the environment, massively important for growth, to make sure you're surrounded by the people that are challenging you. And what I mean by challenge is making you raise your game, but also supporting you, being there to put an arm around you when you need an arm around you. Massively important, the culture and your values. And then the West Cardinals being resilient, which is about, again, mental, physical, social, and emotional resilience. Get it in equilibrium. That's the key. So all of these different environments, I'd say that the key element for me is knowing those 4 cardinals, having practiced each of them, putting myself in a position where they're all enhanced, and as long as I'm in alignment, then you'll be difficult to beat, even on your worst day. If it's not, it's a difficult journey.
so from the lifetime of experiences, which, as I say, I think are very unique, also human, give us a description of where you took it, what you did. You mentioned Compass for Life.
So that's been a passion of mine for a long time. Training and development always was. So I ran a UKSF selection when I was in the military, and that was about just, again, seeing people go through a program. For me, that was about developing the coaches that we had there. And as I started to do that, I was studying psychology at this stage, and therefore I was starting to understand the theory, the science behind performance, as well as I understood it because from a practical, experiential perspective. Now I'm learning there's some tools behind this as well. There's some neuroscience behind it, which became fascinating. I got drawn straight into this environment. I absolutely love it, and I've continued to grow in that environment, which I'll talk about more about. But it was about having a framework that then becomes consistent. I think there's some phenomenal leadership things out there. There's loads of development programs, but some of them I think don't always capture what are fundamental aspects of performance. And as I said, I can use Compass for Life stuff with 5-year-old kids to business leaders. I don't have to change the program because the context of it means it captures you. I think from a genetic perspective, it's about storytelling. It's about having things in place that, again, ancient philosophy would say you need to have these things in alignment in order to perform at the right level. So I think those elements have been a massively important part of my development. But I went into business as well in 2008. I've then fallen into a number of different companies in tech, in finance, in media, and in security. And those have helped me understand business from an entrepreneurial perspective as well, and how to diversify, be innovative, seize opportunity. That again has helped with my growth because I've been a novice in these areas. And again, I think the wonderful thing about going into some of these areas when I'm not the most talented in the room, and I'd probably say that even today, but I can surround myself by talent. It doesn't mean I don't need to make the right decisions, but it just means that I'm aware of where the opportunities may be in these spaces. And that's what I've continued to develop, which has allowed me to get into different networks, meet different groups of people, and again, constantly learn and grow. And I think that, I have to be honest, I think I'm doing that all the time, which has obviously led me into some new activities with AI. Because again, I've been looking at AI from a business perspective, as in with the financial side, but now I've seen what it can do in a performance side as well, and the skill sets that it can give you, the doors that it can open, the heavy lifting that it does, but also where you can force multiply, where I could now get some of the things that I want to do on a global scale out potentially far quicker, in a more effective way. And again, as long as you're combining it with the human element, I think AI has a potential to give us a phenomenal advantage as humans.
So effectively, and this is an interpretation, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've taken a lifetime of experience, worked with other experts within human psychology and human performance, but based around everything that you've learned, and you're now working with major professional sporting stars and leaders, applying the methodology, the experience of learnings you've had through the Compass for Life program, and evolving that into an artificial intelligence system to solve the problem of scale. And we've mentioned this on this podcast before. Imagine getting Einstein, a subject matter expert, and every kid in the world could chat with him, could communicate with him. And I think this is where another thing, subject matter expertise, with Professor Diari Keda as a leading surgeon, Professor Yizi Song, one of the world's leading experts in vision-based AI, you within your own right, that original experience and everything that you've been through is extremely rare subject matter expertise on elite performance. Again, described in more ways than purely physical, the mental, the emotional, all these component parts, which is applicable to every part of life. The ability to really make a difference, but to be able to do so on scale and provide an opportunity, because when I talk about experiences, I don't know what I'm going to experience. That's part of what's good. I mean, it's good to go places, to meet people, to put yourself in positions where you don't know what the outcome's going to be. And most of the time, the expectations have nothing to do with the reality you experience. So you're enriching your own thinking, you're enriching your perspective, and you can mirror everything that you see internally to understand, maybe I don't understand something that I thought I did. I mean, it's almost like the Dunning-Kruger effect, something which is brought up a lot more on this podcast, to do with the impact of social media, where it's very superficial and leads people to create a life which they think is going to make them happy, where they're led to believe they know more than they do without actually having gone through the experiences. So I think there's a global demand now for developing artificial intelligence, the way that you are. Do you want to elaborate on
Yeah, I mean,
that?
for me, I think as with any tool, we can use it in a number of different ways. How have I seen it to be used? Well, really fortunate. I've been again fortunate. Although I've come out and started to do lots of study myself, I've come across phenomenal practitioners in this space. I've learned a lot from all the coaches that I've been involved in and involved with, and the teams that I've done programs with as well. I've literally gathered some phenomenal experiences as a result of that. What was good is I've worked with Malcolm Frame, who's a brilliant psychologist, Walter Farfan, who actually started a thing called Peak AI, and of course, the minute I came across them, what it allowed me to do was to see how we could enhance some of the things that I know would work anyway by using AI, because now the tool, it just enables us to, which is frictionless, with some voice or a video or something that allows me to just give you an overview of who you are, where I've heard you speak through voice analytics, machine learning, and using various different coding. It just means that I can pick up your personality using something called the Big Five, which is one of the most renowned psychometrics in the world, in the sense that it's scientifically based and will hold up under scrutiny. Just by having literally a 5-minute video of you or a 60-second recording, I'll get an overview of where you are in key areas, where you are in terms of achievement, where you are in terms of affiliation, reward, your risk appetite, your power base, and it'll give me a quick overview to say, this is roughly where you score. This is a disc profile, which just shows you again some 4 key areas of dominance, influence, steadfastness, and conscientiousness, and it'll give me an overview of that. We've also got it through the research that we've done, where we can look at some of the networks inside your mind, whether you're skilled, tough, committed, and whether you're distracted. And then by bringing all this together with AI and again looking at your personality, we've now got it where it can coach you as well. So you could look at you and say, as example, if I said, what's the best environment for a person with my profile, it will certainly say, don't micromanage this individual. It will say, give them autonomy. It will say, great on affiliation and having teams around them, set high standards. And of course, you may go, well, that's obvious. Well, it's not that obvious, because there's other subtleties behind that are probably important for me to be aware of. So from 2 perspectives, when it allows me to be aware of me in a bit more detail. The reason I say that is because when I started to do psychology, I probably would have let my ego say I kind of know most of these things in these areas. But the minute I started to do psychometric analysis, and I realized, I would do things a specific way, and I definitely don't do it another way, it opened up another world to me, because I realized that I'm not communicating as effectively as I could do. I need to adjust my communication if I want to take everybody with me. I need to realize that type of person irritates me because the words that they use to describe things are not my words. Therefore, they affect me in a different way. Now I know they don't mean what I'd interpreted them to mean, because it comes across as being a bit harsh in some spaces, or a bit robotic, or a bit analytical. It just means that they're putting it across in the way that suits their personality. So that gave me a greater understanding of the differences, one in myself, most importantly, but also in other individuals. This goes to another level, because it also can look at my cognitive load. It can look at whether I'm under pressure. Am I in optimal state? Am I fatigued? Am I going towards breakdown? Am I being challenged or bored? And of course, whilst it doesn't mean I'm in breakdown, it just means you just need to be aware that the things that we're analyzing here on a deeper level are just stating you might be out of your comfort zone. Now, you may be able to stay there because of all my training and all the background and the different experiences I've had. I could stay there for a long time, but that's probably not going to help me over a longer period of time. So by being aware of it and being able to see that, it allows me to adjust. It also allows, if I'm coaching people, I can get an analysis of my entire team and be able to realize I might need to adjust the coaching. And the great thing about the product we've got is that you'll have a coach that will speak back to you and say, look, just be aware of this. You need to think about that.
How is that working with, for example, a football team, or for our audience member today, soccer? So how would that work with the dynamics of a team? And do you have any examples?
Yeah, we do. So we're already working with different sports teams already, and I'll give you an example of a Premier League coach who came back and said it's transformed the way he interacts with the team members. He now can identify different motivations. If they're injured, what's the best way to speak to them or to encourage them to come back? It's just giving him an insight that you would not get. I'll give you an example as well, if I may. I was working with a very good friend of mine who is a tech whiz kid, very skeptical about AI, actually. So I got him onto the program, had to have a look at it. And then from watching him over a period of a couple of weeks, I could see there was 2 or 3 days where he was definitely out of balance. I analysed what he'd been saying, could not have picked up anything from what he'd been saying, but called him and just said, look, how's everything going? And he just explained over the days that he was certainly out of sync, a number of things that happened to him in his own personal life, which was significant. And I just thought it's really interesting because I can see that mapped out on your profile. So again, it's giving you an indicator that something is not quite right, or indeed it is right. So you're now in optimal performance, just go away. Now, what are the benefits of this? I can use this program in nearly every aspect of the coaching programs I run, whether it's with young kids, educationally. You could look at it in the NHS, you could look at it in the military, because it's allowing a coach to really get to a deeper understanding of the people around them that you would not necessarily get from just a conversation, because you can't get away, because you cannot hide from the words that you use, the tonality, the choice and the way you structure the conversation. AI will be able to pick it up and go, this is not quite right, or this is right, or there's something you need to just to be aware of, which is what I love about the program. It just allows you to get a deeper understanding you could not pick up as a human being.
And it's for the right reasons as well, for positive outcomes. And just for a comparison of how we've worked with musicians, or artists, because musicians are one part of it, there's many more parts to a recording artist, is we agree to focus on the negatives, specifically because that's where the effort needs to be to raise the bar. Given you're not judged on one thing, and there's maybe 10 aspects, and if you fall down on one, the rest all fall down together. You can't have a song where it's produced beautifully, it's brilliant songwriting and lyrically incredible, tonality awesome, but you can't sing for toffee. But you could have the best of everything, but it sounds like it was produced by a 4-year-old. Everything has to be there. So it's quite punishing.
It's an interesting one, because we had this. We mentioned this before. It was quite, and I said to you how I would look at it. So in the same way, and I know why you've just said that. And again, I've just listened to an album that the guys have done this morning, which is you've nailed it. It would be, I probably would come at it from a super strengths perspective. So let's work on all the super strengths first of all, because that's what got you here. So that's your fundamental start point. Work on them and concentrate on them, because that's definitely why you're here. And I would work on one weakness at a time. And how I look at it, I just try to, because I think sometimes in a different environment, too many weaknesses just means you just get over, you're going to be slow in improving them. Work on the super strengths, isolate what is the weakness that's holding us back. Once I've got that squared, then work on the next weakness. And I think that's just, and I think we're saying the same thing. I think it's just, as we're explaining it, it's just that's the refinement I would have.
But the reason is, even to both of us, it's not negative. It's actually for a positive outcome. And I think we live in a world now where people are so easily offended, and the way that I think the impact social media has had, there is almost a fear that the younger generations have had ingrained in them, of the fear of missing out, the fear of not looking good, the fear of you are not part of this group, that too many things which I think are superficial and negative, when in reality, if people could be directed to understand themselves better, then they could become more successful, they could become happier. And success really, to me, is a metric of all the aspects of your life that matter. And it's not necessarily all money. It is the ability to feel that you're moving forward, to be able to be happy with the people around you, the kindness, all of these different elements, the constant growth. And often money is a byproduct of doing a lot of things well and having the discipline to do it consistently without it feeling like a chore.
So I totally agree with you. So fundamentally, that's exactly the correct thing. What I would say, which I find fascinating, is that literally, I work in the most disadvantaged areas in the country, and I do work with 5-year-olds right the way through to 18. What I find fascinating, again, is when they actually are involved in the programs that we run, where we're talking about, again, fundamental needs of human beings. Where are you going? What's the strategy? What are your values? Talking about resilience. There's always engagement. And I can honestly say, I was in a very, very tough area in Wales a couple of months ago. They gave me 15 of the most disaffected boys who were 16, 15, 16. And the same thing happens within 15 minutes, they're brought into listening about their journey. Every person in the world wants to go on the journey. It's a journey of their life. It's about where they want to be. It's about how they're going to get there. How do they remain resilient, and how do they have the right community? Never changes. Tell the right story, ask them the right questions, and they'll all embrace it and give you and say, actually, do you know what? I want to do this, but nobody's ever listened to me before. I want to do this, because we're not creating the right environment for these kids to really do this because of the way education's structured. Change it around, just watch what happens, but you've got to put the effort and time into doing that. And most of the time, all I'm doing is listening. I'm listening to what makes you tick, where's the motivation, where do I need the hook, and once I've got the hook, just watch what happens. And then your mind and your body become aligned, because that's what I want to do, and then it's because I've got meaning. That's always the key.
In many ways, it's like understanding the players in the team. I mean, something CJ had talked about, building teams, and what he's done in his career previously is built world-class teams that have delivered billions in revenue. And he has said the most important thing is getting a culture of people to work together and to identify who are the leaders, who's like the central midfielders, who are the defenders, who are the attackers, and getting them to work together. I think I've mentioned on this podcast a few times, people get bored of it, but being a Newcastle fan, a team that haven't bought any new players for several transfer windows, half the team are from when they were nearly relegated, but these same players with a handful more are outperforming teams which have multiple 100 million plus players, the superstars. The managers managed to get an incredible group of individuals working for each other, and that's getting results. And if you put it into the context of business, I mean, Steve Jobs had once said, a company is simply a group of individuals with a common goal.
At its best, but again, I'd come back and go, at its best, absolutely correct. But when I go into organizations, and one of the very first questions is, are you all pointing in the same direction? So if I came to all of you today and said, what's the super North Star of this organization, would you say the same thing? And of course, it's rare that it's identical.
But this is the valuable part, because we all know it's not. I mean, I've worked at some of the biggest companies in the US, and it's scary.
I would say the same. You just come and go, so what's the benefit of not knowing where we're all going? Well, there isn't any. There isn't any benefit from that at all. Otherwise, you'll just have everybody going off in their own direction. It doesn't mean you're not going to make money or you're not going to be good, but you'll never be as good as you could be. You'll never get that extra element, because we don't know what the priorities are. Why am I wasting energy doing something that has no relevance to what we should be doing? And people can hide and coast, and everybody will do it. I would be the same. If you don't give me clarity, I'll do what I think is the right thing to do. I'll do my own thing. And I'll go off in a direction, because I think that's probably the most effective thing for me, because I don't have any constraints. But just by having the clarity, this is what we're trying to do, this is where our energy is going. And again, you look at the way you have looked at putting an album together over a number of years, it's clarity. That's what we're going to do. This is why we're spending our time. So it's the focus on that group of songs that you know are going to tell a story. It's powerful, and we've stuck to the principles behind it. No matter what's happened, we're not digressing. This is how it's built. That's the strategy. We've improved on that with each milestone. This is the environment you've created, and we're going to be resilient. Well, the likelihood is you'll be successful.
So what would you see the world looking like in 3 to 5 years?
That's a great question, because I do think we're in a little bit of a crisis at the moment, and we're in a crisis at the moment because there's tons of opportunity in any situation, and there's a crisis here where leaders, if they embrace it and realize that we've now got to come back to some fundamentals. So I'd come back to what has happened with some of the leaders at the moment, which is where they've literally mixed everything up and now there's no normality to it. So come back to creating, let's now take time to have a real clear super North Star. So if I was the Prime Minister, and I would be in the UK, saying, right, what a great opportunity for us. Now we do need to start to think about, we've got to be able to look after ourselves fundamentally. So again, come back to self, come back to making sure that we're aligned as a country. What do we need to survive if everything else is in chaos? Well, you need to have a great military, you need to have food, you need to have energy. There's some systems that we've got to turn around and go, they've now got to be in place. That's a non-negotiable. And we need to make sure we've got all the right infrastructures in place so that we are comfortable. And then, of course, I want partnerships. I want to have relationships in these other groups so that we can force multiply. We can have the markets and the business to collaborate better and to move forward. But at the moment, don't think you can rely on any other country, because you won't be able, you cannot guarantee that at this moment in time because of the nature of the way things have been changed. So in 3 to 5 years, I would say that you will have a lot more independence in the way people are working together, because I think it's going to have to be that way, but with some collaborations that will stand the test of time, because they realize that you're on the cusp of real crisis. But that comes down to great leadership. I think AI is going to play a big part. I think people are wrong in the way of thinking that AI itself is going to do havoc to the world. It was always be human beings and how they misuse information, how they misuse it. And of course, you've got to be careful of the different cultural biases that can go into AI across any area. I don't have any particular ones that I would choose there. But come back and just think that it has the potential to transform the way we get knowledge, has the ability to do some really great heavy lifting for us, and give us an understanding of how we can develop even more as human beings, if that was possible.
And finally, in business, how do you think AI is going to affect business?
It will affect any business in terms of speed of decision making. I don't mean AI making decisions. I think I need to be really clear on this. AI would not be making decisions in my business. What AI does is it allows me to think quicker, to have a better understanding of information and knowledge, research, and it gives me the ability to make decisions that can get me ahead of the competition quickly. Used well, asking it the right questions, not trying to complicate it and not allowing it to make the decisions, is going to be the most important thing of where leadership is in the future. What that is, it's a tool for me to make better decisions. I'm not going to just rely on it to make a decision.
And any other topics or points that you wanted to cover?
No, I keep coming back to education would be the key thing for me on all of this. What it should allow us to do now is reframe how we educate kids, how we need to come back and start to think about the old systems are not going to hold up under pressure going forward. So education does need to change. It needs to change in a way that's a lot more holistic, and that it's about developing people's capability to be critical thinkers, but to have real purpose in what they're doing moving forward, that they need to be able to collaborate well. So they need to know how to negotiate and communicate much better than we do. And they need to understand that resilience is always going to be key. And that means you've got to put kids in areas where they're given the skill sets, they're put under pressure, they're tested in the right way, in order to go forward and grow.
So that has just got me thinking, actually. So education is something I don't think we covered enough, actually. So we'll have a final little discussion about education. So given we've had educators, we've had people from universities on, but also from businesses, from multiple walks of life. You're talking about kids, and I think that's the natural place to look at education. But I teach and in some part on courses for the London School of Economics on business intelligence and AI. And what I teach people is critical thinking, but the students that I'm dealing with tend to be people that are already in the workplace, but have understood that they want to upskill, they want to really understand more and get qualifications so they can have a better life for themselves. They can move into more interesting areas, and where there is the idea that jobs are potentially at risk, that they can empower themselves to be much better positioned. But all the things that you've just discussed there, if we look at, perhaps in some countries there's proactive diseducation, which may be the more totalitarian countries. I saw this in Sudan, where the education system was near destroyed so that other forces could have much more mental control over the narrative. So it goes back to storytelling. Some countries, education has slipped in a sense where it's not the basics, it's more appeasing people. Education from the ground up, we're probably talking about a 20 to 25 year period where we've got further and further away, but many of those people are in the workplace. So, and something Professor Song had said, people need to be educated on what AI is, could be, and currently does and will do. So I think the education piece is in fact far bigger and greater. One, because we've had a shift in how people have ended up thinking, and the ChatGPT effect, which is here's a question, here's a conclusion, here's a question, here's a conclusion, and it's kind of collapsed the critical thinking down to what happens with it's going to be more extreme with young generations, where they've reached conclusions instantly. If you have reached the point where you have no understanding of why a conclusion is reached, how can you validate whether that is good or bad in any way? You're just taking a said that here are answers. And if a peculiarity of, if you ask 1,000 people a question and 1,000 people give you the same answer, does that make it correct? Or is it that 1,000 people have been told the same conclusion? Because something which is correct and incorrect is now assessed through popular credibility of the answer, which bears no relationship with the truth, because that's what happens when you remove thought. So on a negative side, there is a real compelling need for education on an individual level, a personal level, people within companies, within context of every single walk of life, within healthcare, within everywhere. Older generations need to understand, so they're not being sold or put in positions, sold things which are not to their benefit, or getting scammed by things such as robotic voice scams. I heard more and more recently about grandkids getting their voices cloned, and then scammers and hackers using AI voices to convince older generations to their granddaughter's been in a car crash. All of this never happened, need to send some money. So it's a very nefarious sort of look at it. But again, education you ask a couple of questions and you can realize, this is not what I think it is. People making decisions not out of fear. We've seen it with people being pushed a narrative. You won't understand this. It's far above you. It's far too complicated. Whereas Professor Song says, really, AI is statistical analysis or statistical probability of the next word. It is clever, but it's not as blinded by the science as people think it is. So a general education, and then the self-education to do with understanding how to think critically, beginning to rebuild that back in. Even as you said with music, everything's become so average because the bar's been lowered, because people go straight to the conclusion. There's no critical thinking, or critical thinking has limited so much. But it means the opportunity to achieve incredible results in a world where generally nobody has the skill sets or is attempting to be great, has suddenly become easier than ever. So any young person from an unprivileged background, privileged background, it doesn't make any difference. Anyone in the world, whether they're connected internationally or not, well, the world is potentially their customer. Businesses that are looking for a new lease of life or to innovate, suddenly anyone, anywhere could do something incredible.
I mean, of course, on all of these things, it's going to, but isn't it strange? How I would look at it is that in any environment that I've ever been in, any elite environment, there's always different standards within it. There'll always be a top, a middle, and a bottom. Okay, it's just going to happen. And all this is doing, again, with AI and all the other tools, is all this is doing, again, is looking at where I can advance things. People can misuse it. You can have people that will be phenomenal within it. Just keep coming back to your own human development on your journey, your ability to start to understand you, where you want to be. I would say that is the journey we should be enhancing. That all the other stuff we're talking about is things, materialistic things and stuff that won't fulfill you. So no matter what AI comes in, that's not going to fulfill you. The only thing that will fulfill you is when you yourself are in a space where, again, mentally, physically, you have meaning in what you're doing. That's what human beings are designed to do. And the vast majority generally stay in the middle ground, which is about common decency, doing the best for the world. And I think that's what will come from most of the things. The extremes, those people that damage society, that cause chaos, it is usually a small minority of people that unfortunately get into positions of power and cause chaos. So I would just fundamentally come back and think, how can I still stick to the basic principles? I can't change the whole world, and I can look at the world and go, sometimes it's in a bit of chaos. I can get very cross with politicians. But if I look back 20 years when I would have been discussing how horrendous the world is, I wouldn't do that anymore. I come back to this, no, the world's a beautiful place. It's a great place. And I'm cross with the way politicians react at the moment. But what I am is able to at least see it from a position where, look, I'm in a good space. What I'm going to do is influence it in the way to try and change it in a way I think is the right thing to do. And that will be through youth. That will be through educating kids, giving them a better profile on what they can do in life, that they can change the way their world is and what society is. And AI can give them some advantages because it's basically a brilliant EA at the moment. I think people get confused with how good AI is at the moment. It does my research for me, gives me some great information, and the way I'm using it and the way the team are using it with PKI is giving us a phenomenal ability to get people to understand themselves in a much deeper way. It's giving us an ability where they can have their own coach. We could get this into, again, the health service or education, in coaching in a multitude of different ways to get people again to communicate better, to give you an advantage of getting better performance out of individuals. So just always come back as anything that's in the world can be misused. But the majority will do it in a positive way.
The positive use, if people are aware, which I mean, that's why we do these podcasts, what they could do, it's a potential golden era.
This is not, I would always come back to see every era as a golden era. There's an opportunity here for you to develop and make sure the most important developments just the golden era is there for you if you take it.
Well, that's the point.
The key thing on all of this comes back to is you've now got to want to be aligned to this and put the time in. What is the differentiator I've ever seen? are you going to put the time and effort in to do this? Are you going to commit?
So for people to begin that journey, where can they find out more about you?
Literally online would be a great one. If you just Google my name, probably will come up and give you the access to Compass for Life. Again, compassforlife.co.uk will be a great one.
I've listened to your book and it's very good. I mean, for me, I would go into Audible, download. I will find my eyes are going, so I find it easy to listen, but really enjoyable.
Thank you.
And puts you in a mindset to think differently and begin. There is always a place to begin. And my advice would be Compass for Life, listen to it on Audible and begin.
Thank you.
Excellent. Floyd.
It's been a pleasure.
Been a pleasure. Thank you.